有上下点子はある。 Thank you. Welcome to this public meeting of the Princeton Board of Education. The board is an elected, unpaid group of 10 citizens who set policy and make decisions on educational, financial, and personnel matters for the Princeton Public Schools on behalf of all residents. We are always pleased when members of the community attend our meetings. The board and the school district operate under applicable New Jersey laws and under regulations of the New Jersey State Board of Education. Each meeting includes an opportunity for those attending to comment on items on the published agenda or other matters of interest to them. The board reserves the right to limit the time allotted to public participation. Law limits discussion of individual personnel and confidential matters. We hope that our meetings provide useful opportunities for communication between the board and the community. Thank you for attending.
As required on the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 1046 et sequentia, adequate notice was given for calling this meeting. It was authorized by the Board of Education and forwarded to the municipal clerk, Princeton Packet, and the Trenton Times on January 6, 2023, and amended on August 10th and December 6, 2023. It was distributed to the schools and others on the standard distribution list. The board reserves the right to enter into executive session at all meetings of the Board of Education. Board Policy 168, recording devices, requires that we inform those attending this in-person meeting that the proceedings are being recorded. This meeting is being live streamed. The representative of the sending district is authorized to vote on such matters that affect sending district students or affect the governance of the Princeton Public Schools as more specifically designated in NJSA 18838.1. In the event this statute is amended, the law shall take precedence over this bylaw. Sending district votes pertaining to personnel actions refer to high school, central administrative, and district-wide staff only. Votes otherwise are considered abstentions.
Thank you, Mr. Bolden. Would you please call the roll?
Sure. Daphne Kendall.
Here.
Betsy Baglio.
Here.
Beth Barron.
Here.
Debbie Bronfeld.
Here.
Jean Durbin.
Present.
Mara Franceschi.
Here.
Susan Cantor.
Here.
Brian McDonald.
Present.
Michelle Tuck-Ponder.
Present.
Rob Christopher.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Bolden. Can I get a motion for D1 adoption of the minutes for November 21st, 2023? Brian, second. Rob?
Daphne Kendall.
Yes.
Betsy Baglio.
Yes.
Beth Barron.
Yes.
Debbie Bronfeld.
Yes.
Jean Durbin.
Yes.
Mara Franceschi.
Yes.
Susan Cantor.
Yes.
Brian McDonald.
Yes.
Michelle Tuck-Ponder.
Yes.
Rob Christopher.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Bolden. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're sorry we were running a little late. The first item on the agenda tonight is a tribute to departing board members. E1 is tribute to departing board member Michelle Tuck-Ponder. So whereas Michelle Tuck-Ponder is leaving the Board of Education after fulfilling 6 years of service, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Education recognizes the contributions that Michelle Tuck-Ponder has made to our district and its students, and we thank her for her time and effort, especially for her work in the following areas. Board Vice President, 2 years. Co-chair or chair or co-chair of the Negotiations Committee for 3 years, Equity Committee for 2 years, Personnel Committee for 1 year, Student Achievement Committee for 1 year. And then Michelle was a member of the Personnel Committee for 4 years, a member of the Policy Committee for 2 years, a member of the Long-Term Planning Committee for 2 years, a member of the Student Achievement Committee for 2 years, in addition to chairing it, a member of the Equity Committee for a year, a member of the Facilities Committee for a year, a member of the Steering Committee for a year, and she was an alternate member of the Policy Committee. So thank you, Michelle, for your service to our district and our kids. And it would not be a tribute without parting gifts. So, after 6 years of service, volunteer service, nights, weekends, holidays, you get this lovely plaque. Displayed proudly. And we have this, no, I'm going to come to you. And then we have this book, Princeton Impression, isn't it? And the foreword is by Shirley Tillman.
Oh, nice.
So, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle.
Can we say?
Is the floor open?
The floor is open.
Okay. You want to go?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Michelle, it's, we came on the board at the same time, and I'm going to miss you. And I'm going to miss your voice at the board table. You have brought wisdom and experience and a very helpful sense of perspective. And you have been an essential partner with DAFNA in securing stable labor relations, which, as you know, when we came on the board was something that hadn't happened in a long time. And I'm very grateful to you for your work that way. And I think we should try to count up how many hours that reflects that long list of all the work. So it's been an honor to serve with you, and I wish you well in your future endeavors, and I hope you enjoy your Tuesday nights.
And Michelle, I'll just jump in and say we've worked together on many committees. I think perhaps you served on every single committee the board has had, but especially equity and student achievement. And I've really appreciated working with you in those areas. I respect very much your steadfast commitment to providing an outstanding public education to every one of our students. You do a lot of things well. It's funny that Beth also pointed out the negotiations, because I did marvel at the seeming ease that the two of you were able to conduct negotiations. And you did so with you made it look easy, a great amount of respect for our staff. And so I really appreciate you and your commitment and your work on this board. Thank you.
I will just say, Michelle was the good cop.
Yeah, let me add to that. Michelle, I want to thank you for your 6 years of service on the Board of Education and for your more than 3 decades of service to our community, with a special commitment to our community's most vulnerable members. Michelle's energy and at times her intensity have positively impacted all of us and has strengthened our district's commitment to equity. Her professionalism, her focus on governance, and her values have made us a better and a stronger board. Michelle, thank you for your dedication, for your clarity and focus, and thank you again for everything that you have done, and I hope will continue to do for Princeton. Thank you.
I didn't get a chance to prepare formal remarks, but I too want to thank you for the voice and for showing other board members how to use your voice to make sure that when we're deliberating, we're always thinking about the most vulnerable in our community. We're thinking about the experience that people have lived in our town, and we never forget that. And I'm going to hear you in my ear as I continue working on the board. But thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and sorry. Oh, are there any members of the public who would like to comment? No. And Michelle, we'll be here Tuesday nights if you want to talk. Please don't. Next is our agenda item E2, our tribute to departing board member Jean Durbin. And Betsy will
Yes.
start that off.
Whereas Jean Durbin is leaving the Princeton Board of Education after fulfilling 3 years of service, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Education recognize the contributions that Jean Durbin has made to our district and its students, and thank her for her time and effort, especially for her work in the following areas: chair or co-chair of the policy committee for 3 years, member of the long-term planning committee for 2 years, the equity committee for 1 year, the personnel committee for 2 years, and an alternate member of the operations committee for 3 years, and the student achievement committee for 1 year. Thank you, Jean.
Very nice.
And
Thank you. Thanks,
Jean.
Betsy. Thanks.
So Jean, I always want to, I want to thank you for always speaking your mind. And we never had to worry where you stood on an issue, because you always let us know clearly where that was. And we appreciated that. You were a voice for, doing things the right way. And I was glad to get to know you in this way, and I will miss you. But you can come to our meetings. Like with Michelle, maybe you can carpool. But please stay involved. We appreciate you.
And I'd love to just say, you look at our work with a policy-minded focus, yet a great care for students at the same time. And we have all really appreciated that. Also, you joined us at the height of the pandemic. I'm not sure we met in person for the first year almost that you were a member of the board, but you jumped right in. And we have really appreciated your work. So thank you very much.
And I can't look at you and read, but I'm going to say, I will miss your careful legal mind and your effective advocacy. You know every level of this town and the state, and you know right where to go when we try to think about how to make things better. And that is all paired with a kindness and a fierce care for kids. And I'm going to miss that. And I know you will continue to be an advocate for the Princeton Public Schools in whatever capacity you choose to do in the future. And I'm really grateful. And I will miss your presence. So thank you.
Jean, I just also want to thank you for your advocacy, your detail to the language, to the law, all that. And I'm not letting you leave yet because you and I still have something. So, but I appreciate how you can look at, things and understand. And really that is one area that it's hard for all of us to get involved. It really is. And it's something that you've opened up. And I know it's really important for kind of where the district and the state needs to go. So thank you. Appreciate it.
I too would like to say how I've enjoyed working with Jean. She really sets a goal and then continues to work to get us to that goal. And that's, I think, really important. And she has promised to stay involved in policy, and we're going to hold her to that. So we're going to see her whatever days those meetings are, because I think, especially in that committee, she's been invaluable to the work the district's been doing. So from the community, we say thank you.
Thank you.
Jean has been an energetic, passionate, and focused board member. She has had a clear commitment to our community's children, all of our children, but especially those with the greatest needs. This has been paired with a demonstrated commitment to our taxpayers through her laser-like focus on the budget and her commitment to using every dollar wisely and efficiently. Jean is one of our community's most dedicated, effective, and long-serving volunteers whose service has been both a labor of love and a gift to our town. I hope and I know that Jean will stay involved with our schools and with our community. Jean, thank you for all of your time. Thank you for your care and compassion, and thank you for your friendship.
Either of you have anything to say? No, nothing? Michelle Tuck-Ponder is speechless.
I want to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to serve, for the community that elected me. Thank you for being a wonderful board. I learned a lot, steep learning curve, and the important work that you do. Chin up, keep your chin up, and always assume positive intent, even when it's really, really hard to do so. And it's just been a real pleasure. So thanks for the journey.
Thank you. Moving on now so thank you all. This is our last meeting of the year. It's a very jam-packed meeting, so we will move right along. And up right now is Dr. Joy Barnes-Johnson to present our Esteem initiative. Hello, Dr. BJ. How are you?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Well, this would be the time that I say thank you to Michelle Tuck-Ponder and to Jean Durbin. I didn't get a chance to know you as well as I got to know Michelle, but as parents and community members, educators need you. And every time that you advocate for teachers and students, we don't always know it, but we feel the residual effect of the love that you have for this community. So I want to stop and just say thank you to both of you and to all of you for the work that you do on behalf of this whole stakeholder community. And so it is that I introduce to some the Esteem program that we have started in response to the call to address students who have high interest in STEM and perhaps limited opportunity because of the pandemic. The Esteem fall program was launched at Princeton Middle School as a function of a pilot that we started this past summer with elementary students. So Princeton High School has a multi-year research program, and a group of rising juniors from the Princeton High School research program came to me and said, we want to teach younger children STEM. And so at the end of the summer, they invited about 30 youngsters from throughout the district in the elementary grades to come and do STEM projects. That was all I needed to know, that a STEM identity could be built. And I wanted to focus forward, building on the strategic plan for 2028 to have every child engaged in meaningful opportunities to do advanced levels of STEM research. We started this program. Our high school students in their mostly 10th and 11th grade year do a lot of community service as they prepare to go to college. And so we said, let's give the high schoolers an opportunity to serve as mentors for middle school children. So our Esteem program was created to not only map every child, and if you've never heard that before, we're looking at students' motivations, their aspirations, their current activities, and their academic progress, to place them in various STEM-related programs. We targeted 7th grade because that's our 5-year. So we plan to follow these students from 7th grade through to 12th grade and get evidence of programs to support them. However, we invited all children from Princeton Middle School who showed an interest and or who had some other academic need to participate on Saturdays. We have about 10 high school students who come twice a month to do physics activities, environmental science activities. We have a hydroponic tower up that the students are managing, and or do just basic STEM related activities so that they can prepare to be a part of the junior science, Mercer County Junior Science Competition in the spring. And so the goal is to have college and career readiness, co-curricular support for academics, and also prepare them for what we think is an amazing 21st century world that they face. So we have guest speakers that come in the morning, then they break out into their strands and participate all day. We can move to the next slide, and then you get images. So you can see rich engagement in various ways for students. We had 101 students show an interest. Of course, we had no room for that. So we invited 50 to come and participate. 73 are on our full waiting list plus, or the 23 plus the 50. And so we're hoping to expand the program. You can move to the next slide. And you can see kids are engaging in science activities and in play. So we see this as not only identity formation, but also an academic way to have social emotional wellness in our community. On this coming Saturday, we invite the entire community to Princeton Middle School, where we close out our first session. Students will present some of their favorite activities. And then on March 19th, we will have a culminating event that's a mini science fair for those students that are preparing to go to the Mercer County Fair. Thank you very much for your support. Looking forward.
Thank you, Dr. BJ. We appreciate your coming here tonight and for shepherding this program. And please let us know when that March 19th program, what time of day that is, and we will get the word out. It's very exciting stuff. Thank you.
What time is Saturday's presentation?
The presentation will start around 11 o'clock.
Thank you.
And what would you need from us to be able to allow more children in the program?
This program is currently funded through summer revenue that we generate. So we're working on a sustainability plan with Valerie. Right now, I'm not quite sure, but thank you for asking. I will certainly be back.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let me get back to All right, the agenda. All right. And then just one more thing. Tonight, the Princeton Public Schools Board of Education and Administration would like to both acknowledge and thank the Institute for Advanced Study for its continued support and generosity. They agreed to extend for another 5 years through the end of fiscal year 2028, an annual $100,000 donation to Princeton Public Schools. And this began in 2018. We're very grateful to the Institute and other organizations in town that support our schools. This money goes directly to our operating budget, so it's impactful. Over 10 years, it's $1 million. So again, we're very grateful to the Institute for Advanced Study. Thank you very much. And moving on now, I will turn it over to Dr. Foster.
Good evening, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Joy. She brings joy to every room that she's in, and we love celebrating our students, and it's a wonderful program. And each month, we're going to try to highlight students at work and play, so please stay tuned. Tonight, it's my pleasure to discuss the long-term planning that has been happening for the last 4 years. So before we turn the program over to one of the experts, Mike, I just want to kind of highlight a few things. First, we can't do anything without extending our deep gratitude to the Long-Term Planning Committee. So I want to recognize Brian and Beth and Susan and our outgoing board members, Jean and Michelle, who really have been faithful in trying to conduct research through lots of methodologies, talking with experts, and trying to come up with a sustainable plan for the future for Princeton Public Schools. And what I can say is they've done an amazing balance of being true stewards of the community, so understanding the fiscal restraints, while at the same time being servants of students, knowing that as we grow, and we know based on enrollment that our schools will invite and welcome more students, we are going to have to create some more spaces for students for learning, for play, and for extended opportunities. So I just want to thank all of you for that. They've done an amazing job. And I also want to point out a few other people as well. So if you just indulge me for a minute, because I'm amazed by the collective work of all of these people. So, you know, working with the architect and of course, Matt at the helm, leading and organizing all of the research. I got to walk the buildings in the last few weeks. And what I was most impressed with, besides the wonderful students that are in each building and how delightful they are, is the principals and how engaged they are in the process. As a matter of fact, you may not know this, but Louis Ramirez has special talents, and he actually contributed to the design of the space. And so if that's not a commitment to sustaining their communities, I don't know what is. So, you know, thank you to all of the building principals for that as well. Now I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who will introduce us to Mike.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, we've been working, the board has been working with Mike Zuba, who's over 20 years of planning experience since my first month on the board, September 24th, I think, 2019. Mike was hired. So it's been a real collaborative process with a lot of continuity from board members, a lot of work done all around. So we're going to, Mike's in Southern Connecticut. He's going to do the first part. And we have with us George Duthie from Freytech V's Hopkins at Duthie, who has come on board this summer and got up to full speed. So with, you know, no further ado, I'm going to put on Mike Zuba. Just real quick, since this is kind of the first time we're doing this, do you want me to share? You can share your screen, Mike, or I can share your presentation. Probably better if you share yours, but I have it ready to go if you want.
I'm going to share my presentation, and if you want to pivot over at some point, let me know. We can go back and forth.
How's the volume out there?
Not good. Not bad.
Not good? All right, go ahead, Mike.
How's
Go.
that?
That's better.
All right, I'm just going to start sharing my screen now. Let me know if you can't see it for some reason, but it should pop up now.
Yep, we're good.
We're good. We're good. Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here. I'm excited to be able to share where we're at with the planning process. It's been a long time coming. I know some of the board members that were here when I got hired aren't here. Some of the ones that started back in 2020 when we were in the midst of the COVID planning process are now becoming audience members, it sounded like to me. And I really it's been a good journey all along the way to be able to be where we're at today, to be able to present an update on this planning process. So things that we began talking about, and we started this conversation back up again in the spring. Really, the community's growing. We're projecting, especially at the elementary level, over the next 5 to 10 years, about 100 additional K-5 students. We have additional growth coming at the middle school and high school. So planning for growth, we know we're seeing new residential units, about 1,100 units are in that planning pipeline. Getting into the community values of Princeton, I'm spending a number of years here as the planner within district. Really learn the community itself, understanding what's important, not only from a community standpoint, but from the educational space standpoint, to really help kind of guide and work with the committee along the way and challenge some ideas and put forth some other ideas as part of this process. So we began back in the fall of 2019. We were holding community meetings. We're having a big meeting in the Princeton High School cafeteria. Then we went on pause for COVID and enrollment dips. And then back in 2021, we went through making recommendations and boards working with a smaller working group. There was no action taken at that time, but we drafted a report, and then that's really where we picked back up in spring of 2023 was looking at some of those options, evaluating them under current conditions, establishing some lenses that we wanted to evaluate those old options and see whether or not some of those would rise to the top, some of those would form the basis of some new conversations, or some of those would kind of fall off and we would head off into a different direction. So really in the spring, the board directed the administration to prioritize this work in looking at solutions for the elementary school. I mentioned a lot of this past work. It's all up on the website in case you haven't had a chance. The links right there for it to be able to go through a history of what we've talked about, what we've looked at, as well as what we've been talking most recently about. So whenever you get into a planning process, you really need to have some key factors or considerations that are really kind of leading and guiding it. Value-based planning, when you're talking about facilities, you're talking about education, you want to ensure that whatever we're recommending, it fits and supports the district's mission and goals, the individual mission and goals of the schools themselves. But most importantly, that if there's any things that are in the current facilities themselves that are hindering those missions and goals, you want to be able to plan accordingly and be able to address those. As part of school construction, there's always the taxpayer element. I've been involved with some very lofty plans that were very well put together. They really took care of every single need over the next 20 years. And unfortunately, the price tag gets too high and the plan then, doesn't get approved through referendum and has to go through the process of then sort of looking at paring things down, identifying what's really the most key points that you're trying to address in that next 5 to 7 year window. And I think, that's where we're at with this planning process. Financial sustainability, there's always that other bucket. So we talked about school construction, which is that one-time passing of the referendum. We're going through a school construction program, but then there's the result of that school construction program and how you organize coming out of it. That has long-term impacts on operations. So annual budget, how are we staffing? Is the building operating efficiently? Is the district operating efficiently? So that was a very important consideration. And then last but not least, minimizing the disruption overall. As part of any process, there's always going to be some level of change. So we've wanted to be very cognizant of that from a student, staff, and family standpoint. So really, the parameters provide the framework for the process. If you just say we're going to master plan, what typically happens is you begin to be all over the place. You know, the juices are flowing, the thoughts are flowing. You have a lot of data, you have a lot of information, you're holding a lot of meetings, you're sharing thoughts and ideas. So this really provided the framework to allow us to be able to really focus on the task at hand. So really looking to address the future growth at the elementary and middle school, develop a financially prudent construction program, getting into that sustainability and cost-effective operations, improving transportation overall from a ride time standpoint and a walkability, maintaining that DLI program at 2 sections per grade, and pairing it with at least 2 sections of a traditional track. As we went through a lot of our analysis, the traditional track just wasn't there anymore. We've heard that neighborhood schools, but unfortunately there were some students within that neighborhood that were not interested in DLI and therefore sought a traditional track elsewhere. Then ultimately aligning the enrollment with the facility capacity for the foreseeable future. This is where we may talk about and go through the process of creating some conceptual redistricting plans that take into account not only the demographic trends, but also where future housing is occurring. We know that there's a pipeline of residential units. Looking at the students that would likely be generated from that and be able to plan ahead so that we're accounting for that as part of this immediate plan. We looked at several approaches. There were 4 main approaches, and then within each approach, we have looked at scenarios. So the approach is the more larger, big picture way to be able to break it down. We always start with status quo. Status quo can result from many things. The decision to not do any change. It could result from a plan that was laid out, but unfortunately didn't pass referendum, so then you default back to status quo. So that was one of the things we weighed these various approaches again. The dual track school was something that came to be in conversations from input through the committee, through the public. I believe over the summer is where we really started talking about this idea of a dual track. The 5-6 school was one of the approaches we took back off the shelf. That even predated my time. That's going even before 4 years ago. That was studied and maybe probably about 6 or 7 years ago for that. I mean, it may not be exactly right, but it's around that same time frame. And then the sister school, which was an approach that we had talked about as part of the master planning back in 2019 through 2021. So as we talked about these approaches and we developed different scenarios within them, it was an iterative process. Some of them melded and kind of evolved into something else. Some of them were pushed off to the side. They didn't meet what we were really trying to accomplish. And we really evaluated all of them through these 6 different lenses. So looking at educational impact, does it improve education? Does it support the mission and vision of the schools? How is it impacting the operational costs from that annual operational budget? What do the construction costs look like? And when George and his team came on board this summer, we were actually able to get through and put some really good cost numbers to some of these different options. Enrollment balancing and future growth, that's where we're not only doing the demographic analysis, we're reviewing housing proposals, we're looking at where these are in location. We're also reviewing the master plan that was recently adopted for the community. Community disruption as part of any process where you're changing either the organizational structure or you're looking to align facilities with enrollment. You always have a little bit of disruption, especially from a redistricting standpoint when you try to balance the enrollment out. And then walkability, looking at some of the areas and how they're zoned. Does this have a better impact to allow maybe students that are on bus to become walkers? Does that then in turn has an impact on the overall operational cost? So just these lenses were critical to us as part of this process as we worked our way through it. Back in October, we had looked at and were leaning towards that model of having a 5-section per grade EP with 2 tracks for DLI and 3 tracks for traditional. And that was the best thinking at that time. We also, in being a planning process, nothing is ever set in stone until the final plan is adopted. So you're going through the iterative process. We've had a lot of conversations. There was not only conversations amongst the committee members, but with the educators themselves, talking with the architect, being able to listen to the community at large. We then evolved that a little bit further and went back to this principle that we had as part of the master plan from 2020, 2021, where one of our options or one of our approaches were to build where growth is occurring. So that came back up. So now we began weighing over the last several months this 5 sections per grade, coined CP5, which 5 sections per grade really is just looking at 5 classes per grade in each given cohort. It's an even model versus the CP4, LB4, where each school would be enlarged a little bit. You would have a true 4 section per grade model with a little flex space built in there in case there's a bubble in a given grade. Students, never come neatly packed, especially when you have attendance zones that have a neighborhood component. So as a result, the recommended plan that we have tonight is this 4 section per grade at Community Park with the DLI at 2 sections per grade and traditional track at 2 sections per grade. Little Brook becoming a true 4 section per grade school, and Princeton Middle School going through an updated expansion, which George will touch on as part of his segment of tonight's presentation. So this process of putting some investment and expansion and updates into 3 different schools satisfies those parameters. It looks at being able to utilize the existing structured framework of those buildings themselves, not looking to be able to build on a different site or on the new site as the 5-6 school approach would have had us looking at. There is one thing with the process. We're going to put out some ideas of where we're at. We're going to put out some concepts, especially what George is going to be able to walk through. And planning is just this continuous process that I'll touch on a little bit later. But we're still defining and better refining the specifics of each of these. What'll change is as we get further down into our study, it's like a reverse of a little bit of a triangle where you start winnowing down and you start getting more specific, more focused, more detailed in your due diligence. Your costs get tighter, your parameters get tighter, the details evolve and change. But what's not going to change is the path itself. We've had some changes in the past over the last 6 months, working with the committee as we worked our way through with our best thinking. But now where we're at, the path is now becoming solidified. George will share the details of that. But keep in mind, those details are still subject to change as he goes through that iterative design process. This is a joint recommendation of the administration as well as the committee itself. And I do want to touch on some of the key moving parts, and George will go through this in greater detail because I know there's probably some at home are just wondering exactly what does that look like, what is the high level of it. So what we're looking to be able to do, especially at CP and Little Brook and the middle school, is to be able to go through the process of adding some new classrooms, updating some classrooms, restacking of space, reconfiguring space to have better adjacencies within the buildings themselves. Both schools will be this 4 section per grade. They'll also have flexible classrooms that can be used for supporting the education, resource rooms that if in need can be flexed out for a bubble. So if there's an enrollment bubble in one of the buildings, there'll be a classroom dedicated to that to be flexed out. So specials or other programmatic spaces won't come at the expense of that. A lot of those won't come at the expense of it. The dual track school will have both at TP, as I mentioned, the DLI at 2 sections as well as the traditional track, be able to retain those kids that are within the zone for CP itself. And then later on, as this process kind of moves along, there's a future opportunity there should the need arise to be able to expand Riverside and expand JP. They're right now below that 4 section per grade school. They're like a little bit over 3 section per grade from a size standpoint. So really be able to have parity across the board for the size of the schools themselves and track the growth and be able to provide capacity where the growth is occurring. The various advantages to this, I'll just touch on briefly. It does provide good alignment to where the growth is. It does improve transportation and walkability. We are addressing the needs at 3 of the older schools. It will provide a cost-effective and sustainable operation, and it allows for a viable use of CP with that dual track program. So I'm coming from a planning and design background. I mentioned I've been doing this for about 20 years. I've gone through many facility master plans, many community master plans themselves. What we're looking to do is be able to look out ahead of 5 to 7 years, develop a plan that meets all the criteria we talked about, that will be able to be a plan that accommodates the growth that we can see in the future, a plan that can be approved by the voters in 2024, a plan that will then go through a design process and ultimately have students in the seats for the start of the school year in 2027. But that doesn't mean that once that construction program is done, that plan stops. Planning should be continued. It should be reviewing and keeping in touch with those enrollment drivers, demographics, changes in housing and land use policy and development. I know the master plan itself made several recommendations for land use. Those have to go through processes of their own in order to be put in place, and then ultimately, if any ordinances changes were to come out of that, they're gonna have to be considered for that next round, really, and see what that's going to mean for enrollment. It may not mean that you're going to be going through a similar process of adding space. It may mean that you may be looking at adding some localized space, or it may not mean much at all, depending on the underlying baseline demographics. But it's important to be able to have this program put in place where you're constantly every year or two assessing where you're at space-wise, ensuring that the facilities themselves are meeting the needs of the community, and have this plan become a living, breathing document, and this planning process becomes something that you typically follow on a regular basis. I know there's always a lot of questions on when does all this occur, and we're talking about school construction now, or is it next year? No, it's going to take a little while. I'm going to show where we're at. We're right in the midst of this fall 23, winter 24, orange colored block. The work that was put forth in the spring and all those meetings is behind us. The project as it stands now is going through a refinement process, getting more detailed in the conceptual design, getting more detailed in the estimating, ultimately going to deliver schematic plans and drawings to the planning board. The board will need to pass a resolution to authorize the project, and ultimately submit the project to the New Jersey Department of Ed, which goes through a process of itself for review, eligible costs, then there's notice and filings, and then ultimately leading up into a fall 2024 referendum. Should that referendum pass, you then get into design, bidding, construction in 25, 26, 27. With the change in attendance zones that will be necessary, you'll have to go through a redistricting process. We're recommending the fall of 2025 for the board to begin to undertake that process. That at that time, and even a little bit beforehand, you may want to be thinking about swing space planning should it be needed, especially in light of the construction that's going to be occurring. So that'll go hand in hand with the construction plan. But ultimately, for a school that's going to open in the fall of 2027, we recommend that the board have a redistricting plan adopted in the fall of 2026. This will allow sufficient time for mobilization, implementation, transportation routing. I didn't mention it, but earlier on in the process, going through a process to develop an enrollment policy for the DLI program. That will need to occur back in the winter of 24 through the spring of 2024. One of the things spread across the bottom, and it's been very helpful for what we've been doing, it's going to continue throughout, is just ongoing community engagement, being able to not only engage stakeholders directly, getting input from the community at large, but as you go through these various segments of the big picture timeline, there'll be different avenues for input along the way as part of these different processes. This is just a very simple way to be able to frame everything so you can see all of the key steps that likely need to occur, and with a rough time frame for when they're going to need to occur in order for this plan to be fully envisioned and fully put in place. So with that, Matt, I'll turn it over to George. If George is going to go through his segment, or if you want to do the segue, that's fine as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, we're going to get George up to the microphone, and if you could stop sharing, I'll put up his presentation, and then we'll open it up for some board Questions, comments? Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Good evening, all. I'm George Duthie. I'm a principal with FEHD Architects located. Oh, sorry. To get to the mic. I'm a principal with FEHD Architects located in Ewing, New Jersey. I've been here in the district a relatively short period of time, although we did work here before. So I'm glad to be here tonight and to share with you and to build upon what Mike just presented to kind of show you the actual physical work and what the potential projects may look like. This is a conceptual view of these projects. We are very much in the conceptual stages right now. As the projects are refined and as more details are developed, we will be, of course, sharing that information with you. So without further ado, Matt. So potential projects and overview, preliminary cost range, and I say again, preliminary cost range and project schedule. And of course, the opportunity for questions. So what are the projects going to look like, the potential projects? Additions and renovations to the middle school, additions and renovations to Community Park Elementary School, Little Brook Elementary School, some minor limited renovations to the high school, classroom HVAC and infrastructure improvements at the high school, and demolition and site development of the Valley Road site, the Witherspoon Street building, dilapidated building, okay, is proposed also in this. And again, these are preliminary projects. So here's the middle school, what is proposed at this time. So at the bottom of the page is Walnut Street, and Goya is to the left. And so in the back of the building, those of you who know the building, there's a cafeteria, and there's a parking lot back there right now. The proposal, and this is just showing the area of impacts. I'm going to show you more detail about the plans themselves on the next few slides. But the back area will be a cafeteria expansion as well as an aux gym and creating some multi-purpose space that came about as a result of this due diligence process with Mike's help and of course with the committee's help as well. So you're going to see a common element in all of the projects with some improvements to the core spaces at each of the schools. And then at the bottom of the page, you'll see a addition being built onto one of the pods, Pod C, at the middle school. And we'll show you some more details on that as well. That will contain some classrooms, a relocation of the district's IT department so some space can be repurposed there, and also an additional science lab at the middle school, another need which developed as a result of the research and the work that was done. So those are the main area of impacts at the middle school. We can move on and talk a little bit about, this is the front of the building. And again, this is that two-story connection to the Pod C. It will offset the main entrance to the building because of its location. We do have to have a separation between the existing building and the new construction per the code. And so on the bottom portion of the plan, that big space you see is a proposed standalone district IT center. Okay. And again, these are blocks right now. We have an idea of what's going to go in those, but there's still some more development. And what will happen as the plan is approved is we'll step up to what's called the schematic stage, which is where we really develop those plans, start putting furniture indoors, windows, and things like that. Above the three small spaces that you see are 3 new classrooms. Okay. We're also going to create a new entrance plaza, a new covered walkway from Walnut, and some seating features and things like that. They're all proposed as part of this plan. And of course, create courtyards, which will be secured with fences and gates. Okay. There is one connection. I'm sorry, Matt, just one more thing. We are going to make a connecting walkway between, I think that's E and C right there. A much needed connection that came up also as a result of some of our discussions, that was a very heavily traveled path for the kids. So we're going to take care of that as well. Next slide. So this is the second floor, and this is where our science lab will be, and also 4 additional classrooms at the middle school. All right. So next. This is the rear area of the middle school. We actually laid this on top of the site plan because there's a lot going on back there. But essentially, we're going to expand the cafeteria towards the bottom. Got that map right. Let's see, where am I here? I'm really very bad with these. Here we go. Right there's cafeteria. Oh, Matt's got it. Never mind. Cafeteria will be renovated. The food service area, we're going to reorganize the entrance to the cafeteria, kind of make it so it's a little, hopefully relieve some of the overcrowding. It takes place at lunchtime. We're going to then create a cafeteria expansion. One of the things that came about, even now, the cafeteria is too small. and we need additional seat capacity for about 100 kids. And so that's what this is proposing to do. Behind that, we're going to create a multi-purpose aux gym space, be able to be used for gym, will also be able to be used for other multi-purpose type functions. It will be a standalone addition, which will be accessible separately from the rest of the building at nighttime. It can be closed off from the remainder of the school and can also be used for community events. So here again, core space, cafeteria, food service, multi-purpose, and then you also see support spaces, extra toilet rooms, mechanical and storage spaces also being worked in, as well as all the corridors that we need to make the connections, okay? So that's the rear addition that's proposed for the middle school. These will be some proposed interior renovations at the middle school. And essentially, it's really just a music area. It's to kind of make that area in the back where there's a series of smaller rooms, create two large music spaces. The music programs are very popular. The kids need to play together. And when they do, you need large rooms, musical instruments, even, with the vocal music program with the risers. So we're going to make two large spaces out of those other spaces. This again came about as a result of our study and our various discussions and walks through the schools and discussion with administration and school level personnel as well. So moving on. This is Community Park. Elementary school. There's kind of a lot going on here. Most of this will be in the back of the site, okay? It will do two things. It will add a two-story addition appended to the back of the existing two-story addition of Community Park, the newer addition in the back. There will be a addition which will be added to next to basically the existing gymnasium, again with a space maintained. And then we have some reconfigurations also going on here. We're also going to make some connections to connect that new construction and make the building a wraparound design. So you have wraparound circulation and you don't have the overcrowding that comes from going from one end of the building to the other. It makes the travel time more efficient for the students. Also proposed potential parking expansion on the corner. So this is the first floor plan. Essentially to the left, there is going to be a three classroom, a two-story addition with 3 classrooms on each for a total of 6. We're going to use you have an existing elevator there now. That's the good thing. So we're going to be able to just break through and well, it won't be that simple, but we're going to be able to make a connection to the back of the building and connect right to the back of that 2-story addition. Not very site impact. There's a swing there. A couple of things have to be moved, but nothing serious there. It's a good open area. The other site will be constructed partially on the landscape courtyard area that's in the back, coming off the doors that are located next to the gymnasium. So in this plan, we're going to construct a new multi-purpose room and gym with a stage and, of course, associated storage space. And then we're going to convert the existing gymnasium, which is undersized and very difficult to fit 2 gym classes into a music space. Music came up at the elementary schools as a need. Also the middle school. So we're going to create a large music room at Community Park and also at Little Brook when we see Little Brook in where the gym is located now. Then we're going to also construct a library, understanding that we're going to put a buffer zone between them because of the noise transmission issues. So we're cognizant of that. And also we're going to take the existing cafeteria and we're going to remove the stage in the existing cafeteria and we're going to expand the seating area. Because there again, we have a very undersized seating and with more kids coming to the building, we need the ability to seat more kids. And we're also going to make some improvements to the serving line there as well and kitchen. Okay. So at the bottom left side, sorry, Matt, one more thing. The old library will be reconfigured to a classroom and there'll be some additional spaces. One of the things we're going to see in the plans, particularly Little Brook, are these ideas of having these breakout spaces, small group rooms, resource rooms. You know, kids today get many more services, a lot more pullouts than ever before. And so there's a need to have a lot of these. So not only the individual rooms, but even classrooms that can be divided into 2 sometimes. And we're going to have that in both of the plans for Community Park and for Little Brook as well. Thanks, Matt. Second story of Community Park is really, again, just the 3 rooms in the back. You'll see we're going to break through on the second floor a little harder than the first floor. And then bridge across. And we're going to make that connection. And you'll see we're going to replace a classroom. And that's in the orange there. And then you see the 4 additional rooms will be actually an existing room that will be left in place and 3 additional rooms added for a net of 6 rooms netting out. Okay. So again, and there'll be some storage and corridors and things like that, some additional toilet rooms and things of that nature on these plans. So that's Community Park. So here's Little Brook. Now at Little Brook, again, we're proposing a classroom addition on the far end of the building, which is at the bottom of your slide. And then on the back of the cafeteria, we're going to be proposing a music room addition. We're also looking at potential expansion of the asphalt area for 2 reasons. We're going to be bumping a new music addition out onto that back hard surface play area where the kids play, and we have a need for additional parking at Little Brook, which I saw myself firsthand when I was there a couple of times. So we're going to try to adjust both of those situations. So moving on. So Little Brook, on the right-hand side of your page, you'll see again that same 6 classrooms. We're building 6 classrooms at Little Brook. Also, again, some support space and toilet rooms. And then we're going to construct a music room on the back of the cafeteria. We're going to make a small connecting corridor there so that you can get into the music room from the rest of the building. You won't have to walk through the cafeteria. We're going to, in the bottom portion of the cafeteria, Matt, if you can point there, we're going to remove a little piece of a storage room there. Now, right there. So to try to make that cafeteria floor space a little more efficient and larger. Okay. You'll see also in this plan, the rooms that we're going to reconfigure to make those small group rooms, but make them more efficient, because some of them are just kind of carved out space right now and they're not very functional and efficient. You have to walk through some person's work area to get to another area with kids, to be with a kid, and they have to walk somewhere. So we're going to fix all that up. We're going to add, we have 2 very large classrooms. We're going to add 2 small group rooms there as well. That was identified as a big need. So we're addressing that at Little Brook as well. So costs, the big question. And again, these are very preliminary, and but here are the numbers for the middle school, and they're in a range right now, and they're in a range because of the conceptual nature of the plans. These costs take into consideration the construction, the soft costs, the site improvements and playgrounds, and all the things that we have to do that are associated with each of them. So the middle school is somewhere between 29.3, 30.8, somewhere in there. Little Brook, 12.8 to 13.4. Community Park, 23.8 to 25.1. Princeton High School, looking at making some minor renovations there, somewhere around $2.7 million. The HVAC improvements at the high school in the classroom, about $9 million to 9.5, 9.6 million. And then at Valley Road, the demolition of the older building section, and also we have to fill in the site. We have to do some development of that site, whatever it ends up being, parking and landscaping, some combination. We're working closely with the town on that, most likely $4.1 to $4.3 million. So about $85 million is where we are right now. The costs are preliminary based upon the information we know right now. As we develop the plans, those costs will be developed as well. The refinement and so forth. So here's the schedule, and this is much as Mike explained earlier, and you can see where we'll end up with in the chairs, September of 2027, new school year for Little Brook and Community Park. Now, there are lots of things that can happen to affect the schedule, especially this early on. This is an educated guess. It's not really a guess, but we do have issues with lead times and labor shortages and agency reviews. We're going to have a lot of agency reviews we're going to have to get through, of course, unforeseen conditions. Those factors can all affect the schedule, as well as, of course, the referendum passing in September of 2024. So I think that's it, right? Questions? So I'll leave that's the board, right? So anyway.
Thank you so much, George and Mike, for that very detailed presentation. Any questions, comments? Debbie?
Yes, so this is probably for you, Kathy. I'll wait till you sit. So I'm just curious for the 2024-2025 school year, will we have traditional classes at CP?
That is a good question. I think what we were talking about is we are going to start to grandfather the DLI students that are existing in the program now, meaning that and continue with the two track for the preschool. We have preschool DLI
Right.
and kindergarten, and we will then consider the gen ed or traditional classrooms next year.
I'm sorry. When you say, so the kids that are there now are obviously
The
staying.
kids that are there now are staying.
Okay, I got that.
Mhm.
Are traditional classes going to go into that building starting in the fall?
We hope so. Yes,
Okay,
that's our plan. Yes.
That is a separate discussion.
Yeah,
right?
no, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah, and let me just say, and the reason I'm
the
hesitant is
construction's going up.
correct. Yeah, the reason I'm hesitant is only because this is like our path forward at this moment.
Yeah,
We still have a few things to do socializing this before we finalize next year, but I promise I know because that's on everyone's mind.
Okay.
What happens next year? And those decisions will be made as quickly as possible, but we want to make sure we finalize this path forward.
okay, thank you.
Maura?
George, I don't know where you went.
right.
Sorry. That's okay. And by the way, I think you've done a fantastic job. I know I'm a stickler on your side, but
Oh,
thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank
I
you for
do
having
have,
me.
I do have one question, please. I was just wondering what the cost differential was between CP4 and the CP5. Or another way of asking it is, what was the cost range for CP5? I'm just wondering
Oh,
whenever you can get back to me.
yeah, I'll get back. Yeah,
Okay.
sure. I can look that up. Yep, sure.
Brian?
Yeah, a couple of notes. One, Matt, I think we can post these presentations on our website soon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
tomorrow.
great. Because I know the community will be interested to dig deeply into this. Also, the Long-Term Facilities Planning Committee expects to have at least 2 sessions in early January, one tentatively scheduled. You have that?
It's now officially scheduled, not tentatively scheduled. So Saturday, January 6th, 9:30. And I believe we were doing it at the middle school. So we'd love to have everyone come. And that's a way of socializing, again, the initial presentation here tonight.
And if we choose, we may also add a community-wide Zoom
Please choose.
during that.
Yeah,
that week.
definitely.
Yeah,
Please set
just
up
to give people
something in the evening,
two
maybe
different-
the following week.
Yeah. And I wonder, Matt, if you could just say a little bit about costs, because I think what we saw were gross costs. And maybe you could talk a little bit about the effect of debt service aid if we qualify for that.
Yeah, the actual cost to the community and the taxpayers will be necessitated upon the interest rates at the time when we issue the debt, the time frame over which we pay for projects. When we're adding on to buildings, it's certainly acceptable for those portions to be amortized over 25 to 30 years, where we typically try to keep it to 20. And hopefully interest rates will come down and we get debt service aid. So what you're alluding to with the gross cost, we would get some of that back. We get a very small piece back on additions where we get usually up to 34% back on renovated educational spaces. So if they're deemed educational, the state prorates the 40%. That's in the bond question. If anyone paid attention recently, it says 40%. They make us say that. The proration is probably not going to go up. Hopefully it doesn't go down. So it's dependent on quite a number of things. The state has fixed now for well over 20 years, I think $141 per square foot for additions. So if it costs 143, $2 off. Sorry. George and Dan are here to correct me. So when you prorate that to the actual cost to this day and age, that's why you get the smaller percentage back. So we really don't know the blended overall. Probably won't be below 10%, but we're not sure yet.
Matt, could you speak to the process for that? So basically, my understanding is the next step, we keep refining plans, and then we get to a point where the board can then approve something that goes to the state. And they're approving it for purposes of sending it to the state to find out what the state might contribute, right? This PEC letter?
Yeah, they give us the preliminary eligible cost letter, which we have 30 days to go back to them with any potential, to argue that. Typically, we don't, because
But that takes a couple months to get that back, right, from the state?
yeah, we have to allow with the construction project, of this kind of scope. It's a little more challenging than some of the other smaller, type of referenda we've done. So, we have to leave more time for review. They will likely have more questions because of the, complexities or it's not just replacing HVAC equipment, right? We're building additions on schools.
So then the state comes back and says they will contribute X amount of debt service, which then we can say to the taxpayers, here's what the real cost is going to be for taxpayers. And then the board would actually have an opportunity then to decide which portions or all or some of the projects it wants to actually put to the public in a referendum. So there's multiple steps that happen before we decide here's the package that's actually going to voters, right?
Yes, as we went through recently, though, it has to be, we kind of have to have some strategic submissions up front because it gets a little confusing at the DOE. So yes and no, we can make separate if we think the likelihood, we have to try to plan for what we think possibly, if the costs are too high, would get removed. So we need to be a little strategic there to make it easier and not burden the DOE. It depends on, who gets assigned the review, how smoothly it goes, et cetera, et cetera. But planning, trying to be strategic helps.
Thank you.
Susan?
I think my question is for like Matt and Dr. Foster. We're going to set up ways for the public to weigh in and ask questions about the projects and kind of vet them, but how internally, like to make sure we have enough rooms for like AIS work. I know you've started that process with the since you just recently started, but you started with the principals, with Dr. Tu, walking the buildings. But, one of our things is not just to build classrooms, but to make sure that the school really can serve the number of students that will be in the classrooms in an effective manner. So could you speak to that a little over the next month or so?
Sure, and I'll have Matt chime in too. We have been working again with Mike and the demographer, just again, as we anticipate, and we know it's a forecast, the number of students that are coming. We've spent a lot of time looking at the instructional programs for each of the buildings because that also determines the kinds of spaces that are required. We also know more students means more large group spaces. So even if you notice the music room, expansion, my imagining is that's a larger group space. So we will definitely maximize that for our music program, which is fabulous, but that can also serve other areas as well. The middle school is expecting 917 kids in about three or 4 years. And so that auxiliary gym multi-purpose space will certainly be a need for the scheduling purposes. And then obviously we're very proud of our instructional programs and want to maintain the same integrity to the program. So again, adding a science lab, looking at spaces to continue the rich program that's happening.
So I just wanted to make two additional notes. One, just to remind my fellow board members that probably the most important word was preliminary, that there's a lot of work that still lies ahead of us. And maybe George can talk about, what happens over the next 4 to 8 weeks. And the second thing was, this is a change. The key change was that the committee and the administration and our professionals are now recommending that rather than 5 sections at Community Park, there would be 4 sections at Community Park and Littlebrook. And that's very important for the board to form consensus around, because we have to have our professionals planning now on the path that they need to be on. So if there are any questions about that, this is a good time to raise them.
So I would just say, I think the next step is, and I think we did it with the last iteration, was that to bring this to the teachers, right? Like, as you know, I got a lot of questions today. So the teachers, through parents from teachers, and, so they saw the preliminary plans, which I guess were shared yesterday. And so there were a lot of questions, and teachers are the ones, they're on the ground. Let's hear from them. Let's make sure that this plan addresses everything that they need. So is that something we can do?
Yeah, one of the things I had already promised, both Louis, Deneen, and actually I promised Jason as well, is that we wanted to show this to the Board of Education first as that path forward, but then we would make our rounds to the various schools and show them the plans and talk to them and allow a feedback session.
And I wonder if you stop at every school, and maybe
Sure.
if you stop at Riverside and you stop at Johnson Park, there might be some small things that we could do to enhance those schools. I don't know. But
Well, we're happy to visit all the schools.
Yeah.
We
Road
do
trip.
try to visit
Yeah,
all the
exactly.
schools,
That's
especially
true.
you.
but even,
Yeah, I
even if
know.
they're
I've
not-
been there. Yeah.
But I also want to point out that, so back in 2001, right, the board did an $80 million right referendum, and it built the PAC and the pool. And so now we're 21 years later. I don't even know what that is, and you probably know. And somebody knows. And it's probably around 110, $120 million, right? More?
More, I would say.
150?
Probably close to double.
4 years,
Right,
construction costs have escalated about 70%.
All right, so that was a bargain. But anyway, but when you consider what's being proposed here and the cost, it looks like we would get a lot for the money. So I think it's a good start.
And I would say, having gone to a few of the schools to kind of pre-talk about this, walking in, I'm seeing things in schools where storage is in cafeterias and rooms currently exist that don't really serve our students. So it's not even, some of these changes are to serve future students, it's to serve our current students.
Michelle, sorry, Rob. Ladies first.
First of all, I just want to thank everybody who worked on this project. This has really evolved. This does not look anything like it did when we first started. And I'm really appreciative of the willingness of my colleagues to be flexible and to consider all the options and impacts. One of the things I want to make sure that we remember is, first, we have to go to the people. We can't expect people to come to us. And so not everybody can make evening meetings, or, what I really want to say is, let's try to be as creative as we can in terms of communicating and informing the public about this project. And the second thing I want to say is, make sure that everybody pays. And this potentially impacts the entire town. And as a resident of the community park neighborhood, one of the concerns that I spoke up a lot about was about the emergency services that happen right in that area. So even though the expansion at Community Park that is proposed is smaller than initially planned, I really want to hear from the emergency services and the police department, and the town needs to weigh in on traffic patterns and burdens, and where are we going to have bottlenecks, because I think that's really important. If we want the entire town to embrace this project, then we need to address those issues way up front. So thank you all for being open-minded. I'm quite sure that you will remain that way and do your best to make sure that we address all the concerns of the community.
And Matt, maybe not for today, just maybe stick a pin in it for some of our additional conversations, but maybe going through the bid process too, and how that could impact scheduling of projects. Having gone through this, or still going through this in Cranberry, has been very impactful for our project, and it could have a really impactful problems.
Has it delayed your timeline?
To some extent, yes. So keep an eye on that for sure.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, Matt, do you want to just briefly, in response to Michelle's question, I do think you have started, there's been some discussions with the municipality, and maybe, you and George and the team have been talking to them, and I know you have some more meetings scheduled.
Yeah, we had a meeting, George and I, with 3 members, the town planner, one of the engineers, and then so 3 of them. And then later this week, Mike and I hope to have some further discussions with Justin Lesko, the town planner, talk about certain things.
So it's kind of an ongoing, in my understanding, it's kind of an ongoing dialogue at this point because we are all in this together.
Yeah, and I would say to address, there are traffic issues. I was on my way to drop my daughter at school yesterday, and Franklin was backed up to Harrison. So I hope that, I trust that you are discussing with the town traffic concerns throughout the district.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I just had one more point before we lose our professionals, and it's good, to have Mike and George here. But maybe could you speak to a little bit? I've heard concerns from the community that we're not necessarily building enough, or that 4 and 4 is tight, right? And we talked back and forth about, do we do 5 and 5 or 4? Why is 4 the right number? And you talked about headroom and what you guys think about in terms of when projections, how much space we need. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Did you catch that, Mike?
I caught most of it, Matt. So if I leave any gaps, just let me know that I left a gap in that. So I think the question was, we originally around a 5-section per grade at CP. Now we're at a 4 and 4. And what it means for the total headroom for the elementary schools as a whole. So the way I look at it, in the 5-section per grade at CP, we weren't really adding any space to Littlebrook, and the way we were looking at it was that we would actually have, through a redistricting process, some of the enrollment pressures, students and housing from what is in a current Littlebrook would go into the larger CP. What this does now is this basically spreads out the new capacity across 2 buildings. So you have a 4 and 4 section per grade. So you're going to have very similar total capacity and headroom district-wide. It'll just be in 2 different buildings, which will have flex classrooms as well as part of it now, so that should you get a bubble, you're not losing any space. But ultimately, it will now spread out that pressure a little bit. I know I heard the prior question about traffic congestion. That was one of the things we had heard about having the larger 5-section per grade. We're putting much larger critical mass in the building and the neighborhood itself. So now looking at the 4 and 4 model, spreading that out a little bit, but also now your headroom is spread out a little bit across 2 buildings. So as you get closer to that point in time for the school opening and that redistricting process that I talked about earlier in 25, you're going to want to be evaluating the capacity at all 4 buildings in light of the construction program and the existing operations at Riverside and JP, and then making determinations of how best do we align the enrollment to the building so that we have some headroom that meets our objectives and we have some headroom in each building itself.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you, George and Mike, for joining us this evening. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of you in the next few weeks. Again, our next meeting is January 6th at 9:30 at the middle school, and we'll be able to go into much more detail if needed.
Definitely. I just wanted to finish up by saying that one of the best things about this is how well our professionals are working with our administrative team. So we're very grateful to Mike and to George and to Dan and to their teams, but also really to Dr. Foster and Dr. Tu, who in the last month have engaged deeply in this and are really working at the school level to make sure that the principals and the teachers are engaged, and especially Matt, who's been stewarding this for 4 years now and working really hard. So thank you, Matt.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to move on to Alex and Oliver, and thanks for waiting patiently. And we look forward to your report. And I believe you have a PowerPoint as well. Yes.
I think we can wait for just a second before pulling up the PowerPoint. Because we'll just have some more general thoughts first. But as always, super excited to be here. We'll dive into some policy-related questions and student feedback in a second. I realize we're not exactly a headliner in that respect with the long-term planning committee and all, so we'll try to make it snappy. But before then, we just wanted to share some cool things that have gone on at PHS this month and how the students are feeling.
Yeah, so let's start with some quick extracurricular news. This month, a collection of PHS students set up a TEDx affiliated speaking event, inviting several students from Princeton High School and some of our teachers to give talks about their experience with the theme of the program, change, which is fitting to this board event as well.
Yeah, and such a cool opportunity. And speaking of cool opportunities, we had Kim Foster, the James Beard Award-winning author of The Meth Lunches, speak to PHS students this month. And before the talk as well, many language arts students had the chance to get their hands on the book, which is a really interesting exploration of food insecurity in America for free, which was really cool.
Another important piece of PHS related news is Studio Band, who are currently in London recording an album at Abbey Road Stadium. Yes, the one with the Beatles.
Yeah, and this is actually a perfect segue to the policy issue that Oliver and I want to talk about. We think field trips are great for PHS, whether it's affiliated with a class or with an extracurricular. A field trip offers an opportunity for a group of students to get together outside of the classroom and dive into hands-on, engaging learning experiences.
And so traveling outside of the building also offers the students a chance to come across new viewpoints and engage in cultural exchange.
And in fact, because traveling outside of PHS while remaining affiliated with the school ensures that all of the memorable travel experiences are wrapped up inside of an educational focus, many clubs are centered around what the district's regulations define as field trips.
Yes, so field trips aren't just trips to the local zoo, although I'd love that even as a high school senior. But from debate to Model UN to Euro Challenge to the Multicultural Student Achievement Network to Ethics Bowl to Silence Olympiad to Odyssey of the Mind to many, many more clubs, field trips are key to numerous extracurriculars at PHS and PPS. And for that reason, they're really important to the public school community at large. Alex and I really believe in the power of community building. A prerequisite to making sure that our kids excel in classes is to make sure that they feel welcomed and belong at this school district.
Yeah, it's true. And again, yeah, field trips are super effective community building activities done, within the lens of the school itself. Unfortunately, we've been hearing complaints from lots of PHS students about the difficulty of organizing field trips in the first place. Several new regulations in the post-COVID era, plus rising transportation costs across the state, have led many kids to tell us that their clubs or classes have had to either cut back on or completely abandon trips that they thought were really important. And in order to turn all of that anecdotal evidence into data, Oliver and I administered a survey to some students and teachers, which we have a little slideshow on, which is exciting. It's like a school presentation.
Can you connect? I can connect if you can't connect. If you go to the AirPlay, and then you should be able to see the VR conference room. And then it might ask you for a password.
Yeah.
PPS.
Complicated. Okay.
Now it's very publicized password.
I think
there it is.
There we go. Nice job, guys.
Okay.
You do it all, huh?
Okay.
Cool.
So this is our field trip report.
We administered a survey. You kind of already know what's on the slide, but basically we wanted to figure out, what effects the PPS field trip policies had on the school. So we created a survey, like around 10 questions, just to, gauge how students and teachers are feeling about the regulatory environment.
Okay, so we had 28 responses, which isn't a super large amount considering we emailed the survey to around 100 kids, but kids don't check their email enough. But in general, there was a mix of teachers and students.
Yeah. So the most striking piece, of data to come out of the survey is that 95% of the respondents who currently organize field trips, which was a little over 20, right? So about a third of the respondents were from clubs who did not currently organize field trips, and we'll get more on that at near the end of the presentation. But yeah, like 95% found them somewhat or very difficult to conduct. And although obviously that number is never going to drop to like 100% of people thinking it's easy, like it's a cakewalk to set up a field trip, which is obviously something that requires thought and something that requires planning with the school administration. It's pretty striking that so many students thought, it was really difficult. And it aligns with what Oliver and I have been hearing from our peers, which is that, they're going into clubs or they're going into classes where they'd really like to have these experiences. And it's just a little tough to figure out how to put them together and how to get them approved. And we'll talk about, some of the specifics of why that might be.
And interestingly, what kind of piqued our interest this year was that we noticed it was getting a little bit harder specifically in this year. And I think a lot of respondents agreed with that, with over 70% of respondents saying that it's more difficult to set up a field trip this year than compared to last year.
Yeah, so let's dive into some policy specifics. Let's talk about what's going on.
Okay, so the first thing is one of the new policies. It's kind of been a long-standing policy, but it's been reiterated and it's kind of become a little bit more stricter, which is that I believe it's overnight field trips, and all overnight field trips and all reoccurring field trips now require, or all new day field trips require a 60-day approval in advance. And one of the striking things you notice is that there's just a lot of fives, which means that it had like a very, very significant impact. One of the key concerns that we heard when we were reading through the responses was that a lot of activities don't set out the specific date until like 30 days in advance. So last year I was in Euro Challenge, and the tour for like the preliminary rounds, the date didn't come out until like 30 days. Or if you have like next rounds, which come out in very frequent advances. So for example, in my sophomore year, we were really lucky to get second place, and that entailed going to the embassy in DC to help present our thing. But we almost couldn't do that because there was only a few days between our notice and like when the paperwork was due.
Yeah, and that problem isn't just a problem that Oliver and I have experienced. It's a problem that a lot of the students we've talked about and have surveyed have seen as well. Because it's just hard to know, 60 days in advance exactly, when an event you're going to might be, because they're often set up sooner to that, or even which like students are going or would want to go in the first place. Because 2 months from now, I don't really know what I'm doing that weekend yet. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. And additionally, a regulation is that there can only be 2 yellow bus field trips in the district at a time. You can see that a lot of clubs found that this might impact their ability to conduct field trips as well. So that's something to keep in mind.
And so here we listed out 5 specific things that people could respond to as key challenges when coordinating field trips, along with a none of the above and then a place for others. So the bottom 3 are just like other responses. But one of the things that was striking was that at least when they were organizing field trips, every single respondent had had a key concern that was a key impediment. And the 2 largest ones were first, rising transportation costs, which is understandable because inflation. But the second thing is also meeting field trip paperwork deadlines, which is what me and Alex covered earlier with the 60-day requirement.
Yeah. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Yeah. Sorry. So here's some selected comments there. You might notice edited a little because we didn't want to, get any clubs out here and like put them on blast. But there are, some comments here that make it very clear to me, at least when I was reading through this, that, lots of, students and teachers are a little frustrated by this. There wasn't a single person that responded to the survey with like, yeah, man, this is great. The field trip regulatory environment is perfect. There's a little bit of worry here. We heard from classes that had stopped running field trips post-COVID and, felt frustrated about it, but felt as though it was just too much for them to figure out how to organize it all. We saw courses being upset about there being a field trip limit associated with that course. We saw, again, clubs saying that there were problems with, this long chunky quote on the right with, the competition date being set more than 60 days or less than 60 days in advance. And then also lots of problems with funding for field trips, particularly for students who aren't able to afford those field trips by themselves, which is, I think, something the district in the past has said that they are committed to helping out with and giving that monetary aid in order to make sure that these opportunities are accessible for everybody. And we'd really like to see that, continue and maybe be expanded on. So that, trips are viable and more clubs and activities can, embark on them and make them happen.
We just kind of wanted to preface this knowing that there's a lot of like different stakeholders involved, and obviously there's a lot of issues involved with like feasibility, and there are a lot of things that are outside our reach that kind of lead to this environment in the first place that we might not be able to change. But these are like our 5 or so main key things that we think might be ways to help improve the field trip process. So things like making it like more clear, especially there's like a packet involved with giving field trips out, but it's very hard. Like a lot of students don't really know. So I think like either like posting it online, like for every single student, so that way they kind of know, because teachers are involved with running the field trips, but students often come up with the ideas and they need to make sure they like have their ideas prepped out before they can give it to a teacher. The second thing is switching out the 60-day approval deadline to offer maybe a more flexible approach. So maybe a principal, but also like pre-approval. So if there are competitions with multiple rounds, maybe those other rounds get approved a little bit early. Third is allowing for more than 2 field trips. Obviously, this is like presumptive on whether or not we have enough yellow buses, but I think it's something to ensure that everyone has, every like club or extracurricular that or class that has a field trip is able to go on those. 4, which is allowing PHS classes to organize more than 1 field trip per year. So there might be some classes that might need to do 2 or 3. So for example, in the middle school, I remember we did 2 field trips to the watershed. And so we kind of want to be able to do that still. And then finally is considering transportation costs. I think I was told it was like $1,000 per day. It depends on hour, but obviously we kind of want to make sure it's lower to ensure that like students are able to afford it. And like parents and guardians aren't just like shelling out an arm and a leg for everything.
Yeah. And that, sorry, there's one more slide. I know, long meeting, our bad. But yeah, so just in the big picture, again, we think field trips are important. We think they help build a better PHS community. And we also think that, the scope lies a lot beyond just, some of the competitions we've been talking about. We think that lots of clubs and extracurriculars that, maybe don't get involved with field trips right now should have the opportunity to do so in the future. And we think that it's important that the regulatory environment supports, these clubs. This is the survey results for the clubs who didn't run field trips currently. A lot of them were saying, maybe it would be interesting to do that in the future. Maybe that's a way we could provide the people with our club, more of these opportunities. And we think that, making sure that that's A, financially viable for all students, and B, something that's being incentivized rather than, becomes like this onerous process full of all of this paperwork would be cool, and would be something that would make a lot of PHS students feel, more excited to go to their clubs at PHS and get involved with the community, and also just, be good for education in the district in general.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate your in-depth analysis, and it's good to know that the board is still known as the place where fun goes to die. But also, I think there hasn't been great communication about why these changes were made. So I'm going to turn it over to Betsy in a minute. But I just wanted to say also, with transportation, part of the problem is there aren't enough bus drivers, right? So I was telling Dr. Foster, my daughter is on the swim team. They swam against Hamilton on last Thursday. Hamilton was supposed to get there at 4:30. They couldn't get a bus. So the swim team couldn't get a bus to come so they were like an hour late. So that's an issue. And then the second issue, which I'm sure you've heard about, is the nurse for school trips. That's state law. So if there's a student that requires some kind of medicine or something, we have to send, or has a disability, we have to send a nurse. There's a shortage of nurses in the state as well. And Ms. Braunfeld can share with you some of those issues. But right now, Betsy's just going to briefly address some of your
Sure.
concerns.
I mean, some of those you covered. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to come to Student Achievement because we talk about this a lot. We've thought about these issues, and I think some of this comes from a great place that during COVID, everything had to get shut down. And as we reemerge from the pandemic, teachers and other staff and students started to organize these incredible opportunities for students. And you're absolutely right that we guarantee that no child is denied a field trip due to cost, period. So there's a question though, as you say, how do we fundraise for that? The district, we have certainly confines around our budget. We can't pay for everything, but we do really want to work with you to think about this. And in Student Achievement is the board committee where these field trips are approved. I can make a guess about the 60-day suggestion. Any overnight trips have to be approved by the board in full. So it needs to come to a board committee before the full board meeting. And sometimes in order to have that done, you need almost 60 days to sort of hit those marks to be able to have this approved by the full board. There are definitely times that for example, as you said, competitions can be pre-approved. If X team, goes to this level and this level and this level, we know that those are coming. But as Ms. Kendall said, nurses are required. We could really use your help brainstorming how to get more substitute nurses to work in our district because we need to send nurses on trips and we can't ever leave schools without nurses. As that makes sense. Transportation costs have gone up and it's hard to find drivers. Budgets are tight, but this is something we really want to work on. So thank you for surveying and thank you for organizing. You all, it sounds like students are doing an enormous amount of work at the high school level to get these field trips happening, and we're grateful for that. So when Dr. Tu is back, she and I will look at the calendar in January or February. We'd love to have you talk about this at a meeting.
I really appreciate it. And just to be clear, I this might have come off in a way that's not super helpful, but we're not trying to frame this as it's the students versus the board and trying to clamp down on field trips.
No, it's all.
Not at all. There's actually been a ton of support from the district in terms of making sure that they're affordable and figuring out the right regulations to balance safety and just feasibility. So
That's
we really
great.
appreciate it.
And we love hearing that you love field trips. I mean, we love hearing what is meaningful to you and what roadblocks there are. But we as a board have to weigh sort of how the learning happens in the classroom as well as out of the classroom. But if we take so many field trips and we're not, in the classroom as much. So anyway, to be continued, and we welcome the public to be involved in the conversation as well. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
So first of all, thank you all for coming in and talking about trips, because I think trips are super important. I really loved what you said about building community and a sense of belonging, because I think extracurricular activities are, for a lot of kids, where you really make friends and where you learn to plan and you learn to raise money and kind of do all those skills that are going to work for you in life. Now, I am notorious for voting against all field trips. You're like, well, you just said this stuff about building community, and that is true. What I would love to see from you is putting equity and equality and accessibility closer to the top of your list. Because one of the things I know that when you can't raise money or get money from the districts, you turn to parents. And for a lot of parents, that's a struggle. It's a problem. And so if we're talking about building community and building a sense of belonging, job one is to make sure that there's a lot of different ways to get things done. And we have a diversity fund, which is very small. And so we're not able to do as many things as we would like. And when you throw in the international trips, you can knock out a couple of $1,000s just helping one student. So I like the smaller trips. I think they're more accessible. I think they're important. I think they're impactful. But I'm really depending on you to think about, how do we make this more inclusive? How do we make this more equitable? Because then the school's going to be a better place and you'll have a better club experience.
Yeah. One of the things I think I've been talking to a lot of people, I don't know how feasible it is kind of working to possibly create some sort of endowment. So that way it's more sustainable in the long term, where Like it doesn't take too much out of the district, and we don't have that instability of like maybe one year you finance enough and one year you don't finance enough, and creating some sort of process to ensure that everything is like people are able to fund what they need.
I think it's a great idea, and I think that there are probably people in this town who would be willing to contribute to that.
Yeah, you should reach out to
I agree.
PEF,
Yep.
Princeton Educational Foundation. We cannot maintain an endowment, but,
Yeah, yeah.
and plus we would probably steal it for like books and stuff, so.
But we applaud that
Yes.
idea. That's
Yeah.
a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and with that, we were going to move on to public comment. And again, I apologize for the long delay for public comment, but we have 3 people signed up right now, and then we have some emails that Mr. Bolden will read, but we're going to start now with Mr. Obregon. If he's still here? Yep. If you could just please state the street, your name, the street you live on, just for the minutes, and try to keep it within 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely under 3 minutes. So thank you. My name is Renee Obregon, 38 Walker Drive. So I listened to the High Tops presentation to the PPS community and wanted to bring, or at least share my thoughts post that presentation. I want to start by saying I 100% or 150% wholeheartedly support High Tops' goal of educating and making sure PPS and the broader community is accepting of the LGBT community and teaching students to respect one another. However, I believe High Tops and the administration and its guidance should be more conscious of the power of the words that they use in their curriculum. There is one word in particular that really stood out to me, and I think it takes more context post the issues that we saw with UPenn, MIT, and Harvard, and that was the word oppressor and its derivative. So in the presentation, they used the word oppressor or oppressed 8 times, and I'm presuming if it's in their presentation that they're using this with their kids, right? So these are young kids who are hearing those words. Use of this type of language risks further dividing our kids into tribal groups and feeding victimization. If you tell someone enough times that they're a victim and that another group is the oppressor, we can't be surprised when they act in that manner. So in college, what do you hear today? Microaggression, safe spaces, segregated spaces, speech codes, trigger warnings. That's what's happening today. Our concern as a society should be that the golden rule, treat others how you would like to be treated, feels as though it's slowly being replaced by an ideology about who gets to choose who is the victim and who is not. I think we can get the same points across without using words like oppressor. I'm not an oppressor, but under the intersectionality chart of the High Tops presentation, it would suggest that I am an oppressor. Just last week, we had 3 presidents of Harvard, MIT, and UPenn unable to categorically condemn the act of calling for genocide of Jews as breaking their code of conduct. And again, that's their choice of words. I just want to close by saying I'm glad that when I was in high school, my school and parents never told me I was oppressed. Again, by today's definitions, I was a marginalized student, right? Hispanic, immigrant parents, lower middle class. All I and my parents knew was that treat people how you want to be treated, help others regardless of your means, study, work hard, because that is the key to the future. So I think it would be wise for us as a community, as the board, as the school administration, to not overthink what we're trying to instill in our youth. Treat others how you'd like to be treated. And again, I think that word oppressor is a very strong word. And it also demeans other groups when they're really oppressed, if you're using it to say oppressed rather casually. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Jessica Vieira.
Hi there, Jessica Vieira, Stockton Street. Thanks again to all of you for all of your hard work and your service. And I really appreciate the presentation that we saw today. I was hoping for more information on demographics, which I guess we don't have yet, and is one of the main concerns that I have in the growth in this community. I know I speak for many of you and many of my fellow residents as I stand here to express my frustration and anger over the recently approved master plan that continues to foster rapid-paced development in our quaint colonial village. One of the more concerning aspects of the rapid development is the use of pilots, which, although they may result in a greater percentage of tax receipts coming directly to the community, they do not make specific investments in our precious school system. We're seeing these new development plans unfold before our eyes. Yesterday, a plan was approved for 160 units on Franklin Street. The project's expected to use a pilot program. It's one of the many units that are anticipated to come on board in the next 2 to 3 years. I'll note that the schedule that has been recently circulated in the Board of Ed materials doesn't include anything about TRW, which is another 260 or 90 units. It will likely force the Board of Ed to have to ask the town government for much needed cash flows in order to fund its ongoing operations. This can put us all in a very uncomfortable position, as we're likely to be much more beholden to our town government as versus independent from our town government. So especially given our newly anticipated growth and our current at-capacity school system, it's a real concern. Many residents and taxpayers are worried. The pilots seem misguided and ill-aligned. They give the town the upper hand where and how to spend the revenue. How are we willing to spend $28 million on the redesign of Community Park South, yet we can't seem to fund the basic needs of our schools? 1,100 plus, more than 1,100 units will only tax an already overburdened infrastructure. And how do we maintain a high level of education in light of less tax revenue per capita? I urge the Board of Education to continue highlighting the need for increased earmarked ongoing funding for our schools, to try to avoid using pilots. We'll need more facilities, but we also need more operating budget. And sadly, when our town council favors pilots, none of the revenue generated is earmarked to help those education needs. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Brenda Frazier.
All right. Hi, thanks for giving me the chance to speak. My name is Brenda Frazier. I live on Random Road, and that is a real road. And I have a middle schooler and a fourth grader at Littlebrook. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate all the work that you've been doing, long-term planning committee. And I just wanted to make a few comments on thoughts about the long-term planning and expansions at the various schools. And I just really wanted to emphasize the importance to the planners, to the architects, of listening to not just the teachers, as Daphne was saying, but also the principals. They are very wise people, or at least I know at Littlebrook, very wise, and they know what the real situation on the ground is. And I got the impression from listening to various people, including the principal, that a lot of these plans were based on Google Earth images, but not on ever having been in the school for at least until the last couple of weeks, maybe. And that just we really, I don't think there's any way we can fit 2 classes into our gym at not fifth graders, at least at Littlebrook. I'm worried that we're putting a lot of effort and money and time into potentially underbuilding or building in the wrong ways that don't meet the capacities of what we need. Like the Littlebrook kitchen is breaking down. It can't handle the cooking that needs to be done for the kids who are there. And this same with the gym capacity, the same with our APR and stage. I just, it would be a shame to add several more classrooms that accommodate more kids, and then they can't fit into the spaces. And I feel like you've talked a lot about various communal spaces, and just wanted to really emphasize the importance of communication with the people in the buildings about these pinch points, because it's really important to everybody's quality of life. And of course, the kids' education. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else from the public that's here that would like to come and speak now? Go ahead, please. Just state your name and the street you live on.
Hello, I'm Olua Wunjanking. I live in Red Hill Road. And I just have a quick question. Well, first of all, thank you for all the information and everything on expansion of CP particularly. So I would like to understand if there's flexibility within that 2 classes assigned for DLI and two for traditional. Is there any flexibility within that regard?
So right now, so Dr. Tu is not here tonight, and she's our head of curriculum. But my understanding, and Betsy can probably jump in, is that the best practice is to have 2 and 2. So that's how, and what we had before was 2 and 1 because Community Park wasn't big enough for the 2 and 2, and that's why the English program was moved out. So when we want to do it right, and we want to do it right for all kids, so the best practice is 2 and 2. I don't know if you want to chime in on that.
Is there going to be any considerations into how the population is going? Just because, for instance, right now in the kindergarten, we have 3, right? We have 3 sections. And then, with progressing, we might need actually 3 and 1. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's
we're
what
not,
I'm
we're not
just-
going to send any kids away. Is that what you're asking?
No, not
No?
that, but it's like if right now in the classes, I mean, as of now, right, in kindergarten, we have 3 sections and
Mhm.
we are, how we projecting for the future,
Yeah.
they are projecting to have 2. So
Well, so the history, so I think the DLI program is 9 years now. Is it 9 years? There's attrition. So as the kids go through the program, the kids drop out. Some kids drop out, and we think it's going to go down to 2 classes, and that's what the history here shows, right? Does
And I
that-
think we're making decisions based on current demand for the program as well.
And that's
Um,
pretty much what okay, is there like opportunity, right, to consider
To-
like current demands and for instance, yes, I understand attrition, but there has been also changes into the approach to the community that also can change how much the community could be, willing and having more enrollment. So that's pretty much into that
Go ahead,
flexibility.
Susan. Susan.
I will say in the committee, we discussed this because the administration said you really have to work in pairs as a team, and the teachers have said that. So what a 4-4 plan allows is a future board someday, if we have this demand that we think could handle another 2 classes per grade, the 4-4 concept lets that happen someday. So while going into this plan, we're looking at a 2-2. You create wait lists, you create interest, and you build that capacity. That's something that future boards can make the change and say the entire school. And so when you have a 2-2 instead of a 2-3, it gives more flexibility to that potential future change, to be honest. Because you're not going to leave one, we know, don't leave one class for not
Yeah.
DLI.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone? Oh, come on up. I just saw the hand.
Good evening. My name is Salvatore Taibi. I live on Benjamin Rush Lane. I had not prepared to speak tonight. It's my to my awareness, there's going to be a meeting on Thursday to discuss the High Tops program. I'd like to echo the gentleman's sentiments about the High Tops program, and I have great reservation about the curriculum as it was handed out. First of all, I found it quite troubling that the curriculum was presented to us as parents through a webinar in which we did not have interaction with other people. The question and answer session, no one else was able to see what the other questions that were provided, and the questions were then were moderated by the panel themselves. We had no control over the meeting. As far as the curriculum itself, it took over 24 hours for it to be passed to us. We were told several times that it was given on November 15th, but yet no one I spoke to received that curriculum. When it finally came, I was extremely troubled by what I read. This curriculum presents, excuse me, because I said I was not prepared. This curriculum presents critical theories such as intersectionality, which, as far as I'm concerned, has no business being taught to middle school children. I've studied intersectionality thoroughly, and there's a victimology and oppressor mentality. Children of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade cannot process this information, especially when it's handed down, not to give them an opportunity for critical thinking, yet it's presented to them as fact. This is not fact. This is debatable. All of this is debatable. This goes the same for the rest of the curriculum as well. These students are given information without the opportunity to speak up. And you can say that, yes, they have the opportunity to dissent, but do they really? Do they have the opportunity to dissent when everyone else is going along? I find that very hard to believe. Myself, as a student, I find that very hard to believe that when I'm in a classroom surrounded by people that are going one direction, that I can go another. It's extremely difficult for an adult to do it, let alone someone in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. This curriculum as presented is very, very, very problematic. I highly implore the members of this Board of Education to thoroughly look at this material that's being presented to our children, again, without the opportunity to debate. It's not an opportunity for them to think. It's not the opportunity for them to broaden their horizons. It's presented as factual information. And I, for one, as a parent, as a scholar, have extreme difficulty, and I can argue my case against this. My child, who's 13, has a much harder time doing so. So I ask you please to look at this material in a much, much, much more detailed fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taibbi. I just wanted to say that meeting that was held last month, that was not our meeting. I agree with you. It should have been done in person. So that's all we can say there. And as far as the curriculum, I want you to know we're listening to the concerns we're hearing. And so, like, Dr. Chu's not here tonight, but looking at that course is something that's on the agenda for the spring to rewrite that course, and we will take parental concerns and comments into account. Is there anyone else here for public comment?
Hi, my name is Laila Cabrera. I live on Bayer Lane. I was also not prepared to speak today, so I'm sorry if my comments are all over the place. I do want to thank the board and the architects for the presentation. I do have a couple questions. I would like to know, maybe in the next meeting, what the capacity will be for Community Park and Little Brook with this new plan. Also, would like to know if there's an updated projections from the new housing developments included as well. Along with that, to continue with Ms. Tuck Ponder's comment about informing the rest of the community on how important this plan is. I'm urging, and hopefully it's doable, to have interpreters or translators be made available so the entire community is informed. Let's see. My last comment, I am interested in what the DLI enrollment policy will be looking like. If heritage students will be prioritized to ensure educational equity, or if it's just going to be on a first come, first served lottery type of system, anybody can come be selected. I do think that Spanish-speaking families should be given priority.
They are, and they have been.
Great.
Mhm.
Thank you. I was not aware of that.
Yep.
I'll end my comment. with
And that will
then.
continue.
Okay. Thank you. I do appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
One question, maybe you don't have the answer now, about the DLI program. You said that the current students won't be, transferred out or anything. They'll be grandfathered in. Yeah.
What's a word that's not grandfathered? They will continue in the program?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, my
Grandmothered? I don't know
confusion.
that.
Yeah. My confusion is, so right now I have a kindergartner. There's 3 classes. So for first grade, will there be 3 classes, and the new kindergarten class is 2 and 2 then?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was
And-
my confusion.
And just so you understand, we also hear concerns over the summer. Betsy and I, Dr. Chu, and teachers, we got together, and the teachers, they're very concerned about the 3 sections. They don't believe, I don't know if you want to speak as a teacher, if you want to speak more about it. Thank you.
Sure. Just the way, I think best practice, it's difficult to manage the 3 for lots of, and I know you're probably aware of that as a parent as well. Yes.
So we have to, in addition to meeting parental concerns, we also have to address teacher concerns.
staff, right.
And so that's another reason why we're going to proceed with the 2 and 2 model. But
Okay.
no children will be transferred out that are in the DLI program will be transferred out.
Great.
Mhm. No.
I see that I'm out of time. I don't know
No,
if
that's
I can.
okay.
Okay.
You waited 2 hours. You can have another minute.
Thank you. Now, for Spanish-speaking families in the community, is there a sort of outreach going on before the January 24th Parent Information Center session?
Again, I believe so. Dr. Chu is not here.
Okay.
In the past, there has been outreach, and
Okay.
we'll make sure that it continues.
Would I'm sure I can reach out to her, but is that something that she would be able, if I reach out to her, be able to provide? Okay. And be involved in? Are parents involved? You know?
So we have district staff, but yeah. What?
I think if you spoke.
Is Matt going home? What's going on?
Just right.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't if you could just leave me your name and email,
sure.
we'll have Dr. Tu reach out to you.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Is there anyone else who didn't want to speak tonight who now does? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Laura Coley, and I live on Hickory Court. So I have little kids. My kids are 1, 4, and 6. So I began this whole elementary planning process, really concerned about the elementary school aspect of it. And I'm sort of now at the point where I'm really concerned about the middle school aspect of it. Hearing that we're going to have a middle school that's approaching 1,000 students seems like a lot. And I did a brief bit of Googling to see what the ideal size of a middle school is. And the ideal size of a middle school is below that. But also one of the articles I read described middle school as being a potential educational abyss in which students have the potential to fall into and not recover from. When you showed the chart earlier of the different options, the 5-6 school was the only one that had a benefit that mentioned the education curriculum and the benefit for the students. And I really wish that the 5-6 school had been considered more for this reason, because I think when we truly think about what's best for our children, what's best for our community, what's best for the future beyond just 5 to 7 years, it's clear that the option is the 5-6 school. And I know there are reasons that have been stated that the 5-6 school is not a viable option. Honestly, some of these reasons feel really insufficient, like the fact that the Valley Road site is not big enough, when it's just a tad bit smaller than the size of the lot that the current middle school is on. And that CP would still require an addition, and it would, but it would be a much smaller addition because 5th grade wouldn't be there. So by my count, they would only need 2 more classrooms to have a pre-K through 4 school over there. So I know that we're probably too far along. I know that we're sort of committing now to this CP-LB 4 classes. And I do appreciate you taking the time to hear from the community about not wanting a supersized school at CP. I'm really glad to hear that growth will happen in more than one place, because I think that is much more fairly distributed and just better overall for our students and our community. But I wish the 5-6 school had been considered as a more viable option. And my real worry is that once we build these giant schools, there's no going back. We have a middle school that has 1,000 kids in it. We're not going to go back to 2 middle schools that have fewer kids. So please just think about the future beyond the 5 to 7. Many of us, I'm going to have kids, like 17 more years in the school district. I'm going to be here a long time. So I'm in it for the long run. But thank you. Thank you all for your hard work on this.
Thank you. So I'll just say the 5-6 school, we decided it's not a viable option for many reasons. One being cost, right? We're looking probably $120 million in addition to, maybe we wouldn't have to make all those changes at the other elementary schools, but we would have to make some. The operating cost to run that building, our budget just doesn't allow us that flexibility. And you're looking at another $1 or $2 or $3 million a year, which we just don't have, just for administration and teaching, not to mention, everything else, the lights, the water, all of that. There's also more transition, which was, a concern for some people. So we do believe that this path is the best path forward at this time. And boards of education are not allowed to plan out 20, 30 years. We don't have the resources. We don't have the crystal ball. And that's just not how school district facilities growth is managed. And I want to tell you, I had 2 children go through the middle school. middle school is a scary time, but we have excellent teachers there, and they do segment off the kids between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So it's not the abyss that you think it is, but it's not an easy time. I mean, that's not an easy age, but that has nothing to do with the school they're in. Yeah. Yeah. But sorry, but thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else? Okay, Mr. Bolden, you have 2 emails, I believe.
Yeah. This is from Priscilla Arias. She lives in the Community Park neighborhood. Judging by the district's online planning documents, it seems that the future of DLI in Princeton is imperiled. The proposed CP expansion would involve transforming CP to dual track and imposing caps on DLI. I have also heard of discussion that the board may seek to eliminate DLI in order to give more flexibility with redistricting. My comment is this: DLI demand will be plenty to fill CP if you account for the growth in the district over the next couple of years. Assuming districts expand and contract on the margin, all elementary schools will also be operating at full capacity. Any short-lived extra space at CP will vanish. This is not a proposal for how to fix the need for expansion. Indeed, this is a critical issue. Let's separate this discussion from gutting a beloved DLI program. All schools will be at capacity soon. How we expand aggregate capacity is an important but separate discussion. Regarding that expansion, I have written in the past expressing my concern over a 600-student elementary school and in support of a 5-6 school. Thank you. So there's another email that we got right before we started, actually. So apologies for sending this late. From Nicole Peasold Hancock, lives in the Community Park area. Apologies for sending this so late. I thought I would make tonight's meeting in person and can't make it. I'd appreciate you reading my statement in third public. I would like to thank the Long-Term Planning Committee for pausing to consider an alternate to the CPS plan. While CPS may be considered more, I can't read this.
Yeah, you're right. It's CP5.
That makes more
I didn't
sense.
know
That makes much more sense. Thank you, Susan. My eyesight
CPS.
at 53 is.
There's a new vernacular that no one told us
That
about.
makes more sense. CP5. While CP5 may be considered more affordable, it is less equitable for community park students, staff, and the surrounding neighborhood. The CP4 LB4 plan is a more equitable solution because it would keep school sizes relatively similar across the elementary schools and would not burden a single catchment area or neighborhood with all of the projected enrollment growth. While CP4 LB4 is not my favorite path forward, it is one that I can support, and I feel confident that a majority of our community would support as well. My dream is still for a 5-6 school because of its developmental and academic benefits for students, but I understand that this is not on the table. I strongly suspect that if our town prioritized schools as much as they have prioritized large housing developments, that a 5-6 school might still be possible. Our district is hamstrung by the 2% cap on school taxes, and our town has done little to help, even as we experience record growth not seen since many of our schools were built some 60 years ago. The town leadership needs to step up and work more closely with PPS to ensure our school's future. Finally, I'd like to thank Jean Durbin and Michelle Tuck-Ponder for their service to the board. I appreciate the many hours and passion that they have brought to this work. In particular, I will miss Michelle's constant reminder to look at all issues through an equity lens, and I hope that her colleagues will long remember to do this as they carry on. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on now. Item J, harassment, intimidation, bullying. J2, harassment, intimidation, and bullying hearing. Moving on now to board committee highlights.
That's an action item.
I'm sorry. Can I get a, yes, we're going to do a motion and then, sorry. J2, harassment, intimidation, bullying hearing. Can I get a motion? Mara, second. Debbie, discussion. Go ahead.
Thanks. I The question is whether I affirm the superintendent's recommendation. And in this case, I'm making the difficult choice to not affirm that recommendation simply because the HIB law in New Jersey is flawed. It's actually kind of a nightmare to administrate. The regulations are unclear. And it's not that I don't think that bullying needs to be addressed and that it's really important to protect kids and create a safe atmosphere. It's that I'm objecting to the law. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Bolden?
Daphne Kendall,
Yes.
Betsy Baglio,
Yes.
Beth Barron,
Yes.
Debbie Bronfeld,
Yes.
Jean Durbin,
No.
Mara Franceschi,
Yes.
Susan Cantor,
Yes.
Brian McDonald,
Yes.
Michelle Tuck Ponder,
Yes.
Rob Christopher.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, we're moving on to board committee reports, and if I may ask, the
Oh,
long-term planning
Yeah,
committee.
I think we have
We
had
can
an
pass that?
adequate summary
Oh,
of our meeting.
okay.
I am happy to see previous presentation.
Okay, I'm grateful for that. Then operations with co-chair Susan Cantor and Brian McDonald. I'm guessing Brian is going to do the report.
The Operations Committee met on Wednesday, November 29th at 8 a.m. and had a very full agenda. We received an update from New Roads, our construction manager, on the status of the January 2022 referendum projects. The large skylights at JP are complete. The smaller ones should be complete soon. Littlebrook, Riverside, and the Johnson Park Courtyard siding projects are complete. The siding around the Johnson Park skylights should be complete soon. We discussed two upcoming bid submissions. Roofs at the Riverside and Johnson Park schools were due on December 7th, and the administration's recommendation for bid acceptance is on tonight's agenda. Second is for the elementary school HVAC project, primarily rooftop units. Bids are due Thursday, December 14th. Overall, the 2022 referendum is on budget. We also received an update from George Duthie of FVHD Architects on the November 2023 referendum projects. Detailed drawings of the PHS cafeteria renovation will be complete soon, and bid packages will then be prepared. The security vestibule plans are substantially complete, and doors and hardware specs are pending. Also, regarding the 2023 referendum, we retained our AAA rating from Moody's and will be issuing bonds tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Where's that? Is there like a
It's on the internet, not for public consumption.
As we do every meeting, we discuss sustainability, and we're joined by Jenny Ludmer from Sustainable Princeton. An energy efficiency campaign is being launched at all schools. An energy efficient checklist is being finalized and will be distributed to all teachers. Jenny and Dr. Barnes Johnson will meet with Princeton High School and middle school science teachers during PD dates to get their ideas. We discussed the fact that a lot of great work has been done and is ongoing, and how to do a better job communicating this information to the school community and to the public. The committee adjourned to closed session, where we discussed the status of the current budget and the start of the budget process for the 2024-25 year. We are currently on budget for the current year. We also discussed the new sick leave law and its potential budget impact. We received an update from attorney Rick Hunt of Parker McKay on the closeout of the 2018 referendum. There is a recommendation from Rick, the administration, and the committee on the agenda tonight. Finally, we discussed further HVAC work, the replacement of 11 units, and our eligibility to participate in the PSE&G Clean Energy Future Direct Install Program. Effectively, we would be receiving 11 HVAC units and new high-end, high-efficiency boilers for our 4 elementary schools for less money than was budgeted for the 11 HVAC units only. A recommendation from the administration and the committee is on tonight's agenda. The committee will next meet sometime in January.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on now, because I'm trying to stay awake. Mara Franceschi with personnel. No, she said it was you. Oh, that was funny. You just went like this. Move on to another. Anyway, let's do student achievement while you guys figure it out. Oh, with Michelle.
Okay, student achievement met on December 1st, and we had, as usual, a very informative meeting. We heard from John McMichael, Crystal Riddick, and Pat Lenahan about the PHS program of studies and integrated electives. So that was actually very interested to learn how we are trying to expand our integrated electives and improve student relationships within those new classes. We also had a conversation about the anonymous reporting tool. We've been talking about this for many years. I think Steve Cochran started talking about this, right? Yeah, quite some time ago. We were looking at a certain proposal, but I think we've gone back to do some more research to get more information about exactly how these reporting tools operate, because there's an anonymity issue and an issue about what happens once there's an incident that's reported, where that gets funneled to. Finally, we had a great presentation on garden and food literacy education from Tamia McQueen, who is our food literacy coordinator, and Dr. Barnes Johnson. And there were some really great updates about the structure of our program on garden and food literacy and how kids learn and what about food and what they're going to be exposed to. And really is very exciting and a great opportunity for the district to make sure that our kids know a lot about the food that they're putting in their bodies and to hopefully promote better health in their lives. I have no idea when the next meeting is going to be.
Me neither.
But I will say that I coined a new phrase for this committee. SAC is where it's at. So if you want to know what's happening in this school district, come to a SAC meeting.
Well, just tune in every Friday at 11:30 and maybe we'll be there. Personnel,
Okay,
did you
okay.
guys sort it out?
Yeah, we're good.
All right.
Okay. So personnel met on December 7th. The committee discussed many staffing assignments, staff responsibility, and staffing duties throughout the district. The committee discussed approving again summer counseling hours for students and families. Mara and I want to thank the HR department, especially Rebecca and Lucy, for a very productive and busy 2023. We would also like to thank our committee members, Daphne, Brian, and Jean, for all their involvement on personnel this year. And finally, our personnel alternate, Betsy, who was almost at every meeting.
Sorry.
You took it away, right there.
I like to give credit. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
My bad. All right. Policy now with Jean Durbin.
Thanks.
It's late. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm
Met
sorry.
on December 1st, 8:15 via Zoom. Next meeting in January, TBD. We discussed policies and regulations up for first and second read this evening and deferred a handful of policies for second read in January to give the administration time to review and edit. A good portion of our discussion focused on class size and how we very much want to keep the small class sizes to which the community is accustomed. We spent time discussing the expansion of electives and courses to ensure all of our students, especially special ed students, have a menu of options from which to choose. Advocacy work continues on Dropbox fees during elections and removing polling locations from our schools, among other issues. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And it's been ours, Jean. Thank you. We will miss your guidance and your laser-like focus, but you know when the meetings are, they might not be at 8 o'clock in the morning anymore. All right, sorry, Debbie.
And I would like to make one more thank you to our board leadership. It's been a very interesting year and want to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Both for
not breaking down in tears.
Whatever, for getting us to the end. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, now moving on. All right, L1, policies first reading, L2, second reading, then personnel, addendum to the employment agreement between Rebecca Gold and the Princeton Board of Education, M2, retirement, Paige Hinton Mason, a special education teacher at Princeton High School, has submitted her retirement, and she will begin March 1st, 2024. She will have completed 27 years in the district, and we wish her all the best for a healthy and long retirement. Then we have M3 resignations, M4 appointments, M5 personnel items, and just stop me. M6 leave of absence, M7 student substitute student placement, M8 curriculum and instruction, M9 student services, M10 sixth period compensation, N1 program of studies, O1 educational placement of pupils 23-24, Then we're moving on to the business. P1, financial reports. P2, fire evacuation drills. P3, PSG clean energy that Mr. McDonald was talking about. P4, formal bid award roof replacement at JP in Riverside. P5, resolution of the Princeton Board of Education authorizing settlement and mutual release. And P6, registration travel agenda. And we move on now to our second public comment. If there's anyone here who would like to speak about anything. Any more emails, Mr. Bolden?
Do you want me to look?
Yeah, why not?
I don't have my email open.
All right, I'll check.
Hold on. I can get there quicker.
Yeah, let me check. No emails. All right. Moving on to R1, the consent vote. Can I get a motion? Beth, second. Rob?
Daphne Kendall,
Yes.
Betsy Baglio,
Yes.
Beth Barron,
Yes.
Debbie Bronfeld,
Yes.
Jean Durbin,
Yes.
Mara Franceschi,
Yes.
Susan Cantor,
Yes.
Brian McDonald,
Yes.
Michelle Tuck Ponder,
Yes.
Rob Christopher.
Yes.
Consent agenda passes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bolden. This is our last meeting of the year. Thank you all for joining us. Our first meeting in the new year, our reorg meeting, is on January 2nd. It'll be 6 o'clock here at Valley Road. And as Dr. Foster and Mr. McDonald said, we then have a community planning discussion on January 6th at 9:30 at the middle school. Oh, Jean has one.
I'm sorry I didn't think of this earlier, but Dr. Foster sent out a lovely tribute to an employee of ours who passed away, Joseph Vaccaro. And it was such a lovely tribute. And I just wanted us to take a moment to remember Joseph if we could.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, can I get a motion to adjourn? Mara, second. Jean, all in favor? Happy New Year, everyone.